Reports are escalating surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs making a sneaky signing as reporters revealed they are targeting a KHL forward who has done some very good things in the KHL. So we're going to break down that report and discuss exactly what it entails as it could have some serious implications on the Toronto Maple Leafs this season. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button if you're part of the 70 or so percent who aren't subscribed to the channel. We're on the road to 14,000 subscribers and we produce daily Leafs content. So it means the world to myself and Darius if you could do that. But Darius, we have some things to go over today, and this one is actually about a signing. And obviously, the Leafs do play tomorrow, but this report dropped and it has a lot of Leafs fans pretty excited here. And there's a few things to go over with this player. And if you're unfamiliar with him, he could be a Toronto Maple Leaf very, very soon. So you see this here: the Leafs forever, Toronto Maple Leafs, are among the teams interested in the KHL forward Maxim Shabanov. He's 24, has appeared in 14 games this season, recording 7 goals and 10 assists for a total of 17 points in 14 games. So he's not quite a prospect. He's 24 years old, but he's still young, and he's been very productive in the KHL, and the Leafs are among a handful of teams, only a couple of other teams that are interested in the forward. And we'll get into the exact report and discuss the other teams and what the odds are and things like that. But just as a baseline here, Darius, this is pretty exciting if you're a Leafs fan.
A little bit exciting. Yeah, this is a guy that, I mean, if you're watching some of his highlights, and I mean, it's been making the rounds on Twitter. I don't think a lot of Leaf fans know about this player at this point because obviously it's been pretty quiet and it's only popped up over the last day or two. And obviously there's other teams involved. That's where I first saw it, with another team being involved. And then obviously the Leafs were in on that, on the sweepstakes or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Maxim Shabanov, I mean, point of game player this year in the KHL. And I mean, he's not the Connor McDavid of the NHL, or the KHL, I should say, or anything like that. But I mean, he's still a very good, skilled forward in the KHL and puts up a lot of points. Especially this year, it looks like he's having a bit of a breakout year, if you want to call it that, even though he's been very good in the past, just under a point of game player. And I would say it might be a little bit harder to score in the KHL just because of the ice surface. And obviously, the game's just different over there, right? So it might be a little bit harder to put up crazy points like we see players put up here over 100 points a year, right? So a little bit different, but he's still a very good, useful, skillful forward. The only thing, in looking at, some of the highlights and obviously his IMDb page or whatever, he's small. He is a very small forward. He's 5'8" and not even 180 pounds. So that's something I think the Leafs are trying to get away from, but he's another player that obviously they're taking a look at. I think some other teams might be more interested in him than the Leafs, but again, a skilled forward that they don't have to draft or go through any weird contract things. They would just have to sign him out of the KHL, right? So interesting player to look forward to, maybe, perhaps, but yeah, he's an interesting player for sure.
Yeah, he doesn't scream Brad Treliving signing to me. Maybe more so Kyle Dubas, so maybe he'll ring the phone and get on the line for him. But you can see this here, scores a lacrosse style goal. Like, if you go and watch his highlights, he's very impressive. And ultimately, there's not many teams going for this guy. And you can see this here, the Islanders are among one of the other teams that have asked to, I guess, evaluate and look to sign the Russian forward. And basically, at this stage, these are only conversations. There have been no meetings as of yet, and no American scouts have made the trip to see Shabanov play in person. And like their other prospect, the expectation that the suitors will eventually grow to 10 to 12 teams in total by the end of the season. When he's expected to make a decision. But the fact that the Leafs are kind of among the first handful means that they're at least very interested in the player. And again, it doesn't scream Brad Treliving signing to me. That's the only thing that's a little bit interesting. He's a very small player. And not only that, again, he's only 24, so this signing wouldn't necessarily be to win this season or win next year. It'd really be for the next handful of seasons. He's only 24 years old. Depending on how the contract structure looks like, it's always interesting seeing the contract when he's over from the KHL. But do you have any thoughts on that, just regarding the fit for Brad Treliving and what his team is trying to mold into, alongside the fact that the Leafs have a ton of forwards right now? They're obviously going to have to make a trade before the November 1st deadline. I mean, it seems like Timothy Liljegren is going to get into the lineup tonight. So regarding a trade, it might not be for a defenseman. We're not sure yet. We'll get into what position he plays and things like that in a second here. But it's an interesting fit, but you can't have too many forwards, especially young ones in the KHL. And ultimately, if he's going to be a star and they think he's going to be a star, I don't think they're too worried about what their lineup looks like right now in this very moment.
No, when I started looking at him and doing my research, when I first saw the name that the Leafs were interested, I'm looking at 5'8", not even 180 pounds. I'm like, this is not Brad Treliving. This is not Craig Berube. Where would this player ever fit in? But when you watch some of the highlights, like, he's a pretty electric player and he plays with some tenacity. Like, he's got a great shot. He's flying in. He's driving the net, which is exactly what they're trying to do, right? So maybe they're looking at something like that where, all right, this player, yeah, he's small, but he drives the net, right? He's driving play. So in that way, I could see him being a Brad Treliving and Craig Berube type type player, but again, he's a smaller player. And I don't know where he'd fit into the lineup right now, right? He's a winger. He's not a centerman. They could use maybe a second line centerman. Like if he was a guy who can come in and play second line center, maybe bump Tavares down, then maybe you have something there. He's a really skillful forward, right? But that's not the case at this point. He's also a left shot. I think they need maybe another right shot. Like they have a ton of left shots, especially at forward. So that does play into some lineup decisions as well. So he doesn't like jump off the screen at you or off the board, whatever, as a Brad Treliving or Craig Berube type player. But there is certain things in his game when I was watching highlights that could lend to why they would like him, or they're at least taking a look at him. I do think the Islanders are probably at this point the front runners to get him. There's a lot of interest there from what I've been reading, but it sounds like the Leafs, like you mentioned, are like one of four or five teams that have interest in him so far. So it's a real possibility. He's a great player. He's a very skillful player. I just don't know where he fits into the lineup right now, but maybe it's not right now. Maybe it's in the future, right? Maybe he's a guy who comes in, like Gurbankin, who goes to the AHL first and kind of refines his game in North America and figures it out. So it's definitely still an option. But again, yeah, I don't know where he fits in right this moment and if he is even a Craig Berube type player. But there are certain things in his game that I think could lend to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so over his 4 seasons in the KHL so far, he's played both wing and center. And we know one of the last KHL prospects chose the Islanders over a number of teams. There's a chance that Shabanov follows suit on that front. You look at his stats here. So this year, 17 points in 15 games. Last season, in 64 games, he still put up a respectable 50 points. Season before, 31 points in 67 games. So he's really been slowly improving the longer he's been in the KHL. And again, that makes sense. It comes with experience. It comes with age. He's obviously now 24. You can see up top there, not very tall at all, 5'8", 180-ish. So it's interesting. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, whether or not Brad Treliving decides to sign this guy, I like to see the Toronto Maple Leafs linked to a lot of these players. Now, we've seen it with Gurbankin. We've seen it with some other guys. Players who play in the KHL, it usually translates fairly well. Obviously, it's hit or miss. So I think that this could be a very good fit for the Leafs. But the biggest question mark is, I think I like the point you mentioned about the AHL. There's a good chance there's a world where they sign him, they let him refine his game in the AHL because they're in no rush right now. They don't need a forward right now immediately that needs to come in and put up a point per game or even half a point per game. They have so much depth in the forward position that they can afford to bring him in and put him in the AHL, stash him for a bit, let him develop like Gurbankin is currently doing, and then bring them all up together for the next phase of prospects that come up. Because I mean, we have a lot of forwards and it's still unclear even at this point in the NHL group which one is going to stick, let alone if they bring in another prospect.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that could be the move. Maybe they talk to him. Again, there was a part in that article as well, and a lot going around that nobody's actually sent any scouts to go see him yet. So this is going to be a long, drawn out process. Like he's not going to get signed tomorrow. It could be a couple months away or even next season, right? So there is a world where the Leafs could, go scout him. Okay, yes, we do like this player. He can help us in these ways. You go talk to him and his agent, and you're like, hey, listen, like, come play for the Marlies and then you can play for the Leafs. Because look at Gurbankin right now. He is so close to the NHL. But if, in the KHL, he's playing there and whatever, he's a regular player, but he is so close to the NHL because it's a little bit different, right? So I do think there is a world where it could translate to help the Leafs. And obviously maybe he comes over and plays in the AHL first. But again, Islanders look like the front runners, but the fact that the Leafs are at least doing their due diligence, I think that's a good thing. At least they're in on every player that might be available, right? I think that's a good thing. If you're the Leafs, you should be in on every player who's available because if they can help your team, why not bring them over, right?
Yeah, and it seems like a decision will be made between now and the end of the season, probably towards the end of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Do you want to see the Leafs sign him, or would you rather them hold off and let a team like the Islanders take it? Let us know. See you guys later.